The 2016 Australian Grand Prix, formerly known as the 2016 Formula One Rolex Australian Grand Prix, was a Formula One motor race that was held on the 20th of March 2016 in Melbourne. The race was contested over 57 laps of the Melbourne Grand Prix circuit and was the first round of the 2016 FIA Formula One World Championship. The race marked the 80th race in the combined history of the Australian Grand Prix, which dates back to the 100 Miles Road race of 1928, and the 21st time the event was held at the Melbourne Grand Prix circuit. Mercedes driver Lewis Hamilton was the defending race winner. Hamilton took the first pole position of the season and the 50th of his career in a qualifying session that saw the introduction of a new one-by-one elimination format that was widely criticized. His teammate Nico Rosberg took victory ahead of Hamilton and Ferrari's Sebastian Vettel. The race was stopped on lap 18 following an accident involving Fernando Alonso and Esteban Gutierrez. Mercedes used the brake for a change of tires that allowed their drivers to take a 1-2 finish after Vettel had initially led the race from the start. Romain Grosjean finished 6th, scoring points for the Haas F1 team on their DEAQ BUT, the first completely new team to do so since 2002. Mercedes equaled the record for most consecutive 1-2 finishes, by achieving their 5th in a row. Report. Background. Regulation changes. The race saw the introduction of a new qualifying system. As before, qualifying was divided into 3 parts. However, instead of eliminating the slowest drivers at the end of each respective session, the slowest driver at a given point was now eliminated from contention every 90 seconds, with the countdown starting some minutes into every session. In a further change of regulations, tire supplier Pirelli now made 3 instead of 2 tire compounds available for each Grand Prix. For the Australian Grand Prix, these were the super soft, and medium compounds. The race saw the competitive DEAQ BUT of the Haas F1 team, and its car, the Haas VF16. Free practice. Per the regulations for the 2016 season, 3 practice sessions were held. 2 1.5-hour sessions on Friday and another 1-hour session before qualifying on Saturday. Due to several rain showers between first and second practice, the track was again wet during the second session, which limited the drivers to using the intermediate tires only. Hamilton was again fastest, setting a time of 1:38.841. Teammate Rosberg crashed at turn 7 30 minutes into the session, damaging a new specification front wing that the team had deliberately not run in first practice. For fear of damage, Rosberg later apologized for the incident. Although rain fell on Saturday morning, the track had dried by the start of the final free practice session. Lewis Hamilton again set the fastest time with 1:25.624, less than 0.2 of a second in front of teammate Rosberg, with Sebastian Vettel in third position close behind. The fastest times had been set on the super soft tire compound. However, Mercedes' advantage over Ferrari proved more significant, up to 0.7 of a second on the harder soft compound, the tire most likely to be used in the race. Toro Rosso confirmed their good pace for the weekend with 4th and 6th place for Carlos Sainz and Max Verstappen respectively, being about half a second quicker than their sister team, Red Bull Racing. A major incident occurred just seconds after the beginning of the practice session, when Rio Hirianto and Romain Grosjean collided in the pit lane. Both cars needed to equip new front wings and Haas also changed the floor on Grosjean's car. Qualifying. Qualifying got underway on Saturday afternoon with new rules in place. Just as in years before, the qualifying procedure was divided into 3 parts, with the first part, Q1, running for 16 minutes and the second and third parts, Q2 and Q3, being 15 and 14 minutes long respectively. All 22 cars contested the first part, with 7 drivers eliminated from further contention in each of the first 2 parts of qualifying, leaving 8 drivers to compete for pole position in Q3. However, in a change of rules, drivers were now eliminated during the session, with the slowest runner at a given point being taken out from contention every 90 seconds, beginning 7 minutes into Q1, 6 minutes into Q2 and 5 minutes into Q3. The new format meant that all cars took to the track quickly in Q1, with everyone setting lap times on the super soft compound, the fastest tire available at the event. The 2 Manor drivers were first to be eliminated, having set only one timed lap each, as were both Haas cars after them, being unable to cross the finishing line in time. The same fate caught out Daniil Kvyat, who qualified 18th. Both Sauber drivers were able to go out on a second timed lap, but proved too slow to avoid being the last to go out in Q1, after Renault rookie Jolyon Palmer was able to avoid elimination, setting a faster time towards the end of the session. Q2 started with a busy track once more, but many of the top drivers elected not to go out on a second timed run after setting sufficient lap times first time around. The eliminated drivers were determined rather quickly, with the 2 Renault drivers qualifying 14th and 15th respectively. The 2 McLarens were next to go out of contention, before Bottas was eliminated for 11th place on the grid, failing to improve on his lap time. Both Force India drivers were the last not to make it into Q3, with Sergio Perez beating his teammate Hülkenberg to 9th. The third part of qualifying determined pole position, and only the 2 Mercedes drivers set 2 timed laps, after he clocked in behind both Ferrari drivers in his first run. Rosberg improved to 2nd place on his second time out, but was unable to challenge teammate Hamilton, who took the 50th pole position of his career. Every other driver was limited to only one timed lap, and in the end, the 2 Ferrari cars of Vettel and Raikkonen locked out the second row on the grid ahead of Max Verstappen and Felipe Massa. Sainz and Ricciardo rounded up the top 8 on the grid. Post-qualifying. The new qualifying format was criticized immediately after the end of the session by pundits, drivers and team personnel alike. Sky Sports commentator Martin Brundle called for a swift revision of the rules, saying the procedure was not acceptable, and calling for it to be abandoned before the next race. Mercedes' executive director Toto Wolff and former driver Johnny Herbert were equally critical, describing it as rubbish and embarrassing. Red Bull team director Christian Horner was apologetic, describing the format as race. At the end of the formation lap, Daniil Kvyat was unable to reach the grid due to an electrical issue. On the end of lap 11, Rosberg was the first frontrunner to go into the pit lane, and Vettel followed suit just 2 laps later. A quicker stop by Rosberg saw Vettel emerge just in front of him, but the Ferrari stayed ahead and he passed Hamilton for second on lap 16. On the same lap, both Raikkonen and Hamilton made pit stops as well, re-establishing the order. 1 lap later, Fernando Alonso had a major accident as he ran into the back of Gutierrez, being lifted into the air at 300 km/h and hitting the left-hand barrier before subsequently rolling over several times before coming to rest upside down against the barrier at turn 3, experiencing a peak force of 46 g. While the cars waited for the restart, work on the cars was allowed and Hamilton's front wing was changed, while Rio Hirianto ended his race. As the race resumed behind the safety car, both Ferrari drivers were running on the super soft tire compound, with both Mercedes now equipped with mediums, which were set to last for the rest of the race. The running order at the restart was Vettel, Rosberg, Raikkonen, Ricciardo, Verstappen, Sainz, Hamilton, Massa, Grosjean, Bottas. Grosjean in ninth was the only driver who had not made a pit stop before the red flag was shown, which allowed him to save one pit stop and change his tires during the break. Vettel led away at the restart, but his Ferrari teammate Raikkonen was forced to pull into the pit lane on lap 22 with fire coming from his airbox and subsequently retired, handing second place to Rosberg. Over the next couple of laps, Vettel was able to pull away from Rosberg on the softer tire compound. Marcus Ericsson was handed a drive-through penalty for having his team work on his car less than 15 seconds before the restart. By lap 31, the gap between Vettel and Rosberg started to come down again, while Hamilton moved ahead of Sainz into fifth as the latter made a pit stop. 2 laps later, Verstappen was in as well, but a slow pit stop lost him time. On lap 35, Rosberg took the lead as Vettel made a pit stop, who also lost time due to a mistake during his stop. He emerged back on track in fourth place. Hamilton now started to pull back time on the leaders, while debutant Palmer held off the 2 Toro Rosso drivers in a struggle for ninth place. On lap 40, Ericsson started to slow on track and eventually retired. 1 lap later, Hamilton moved into second ahead of Ricciardo on the main straight. Lap 42 saw first Sainz and then Verstappen overtake Palmer's Renault, who fell back to 11th. Another lap later, Ricciardo changed tires and came out fifth behind Massa, taking fourth 3 laps later. At the front, Hamilton and Vettel slowly closed on Rosberg, with the gap between the two also coming down. Vettel came onto the back of Hamilton with 5 laps remaining, chasing him closely for several laps before making a mistake in the second-to-last corner of lap 55, losing his chances at second place. As the race ended, Nico Rosberg took victory. 31 years after his father Keke Rosberg had won the 1985 Australian Grand Prix, Hamilton and Vettel rounded out the podium ahead of Ricciardo and Massa, with Romain Grosjean having finished in 6th. Haas F1 became the first new, and from scratch, constructor since Toyota in 2002 to score points in its inaugural Grand Prix race entry. Post-race. At the podium interviews, conducted by former Formula One driver Mark Webber, both Mercedes drivers expressed delight at their result. Hamilton in particular described his race as great, and added that he loved the fact that we had to come through from far behind. Quote, following an inquiry into the incident between Alonso and Gutierrez, the stewards took no action against either driver, deeming it a racing incident with no driver particularly to blame. Particular praise after the race went to both newcomers Haas and debutant Jolyon Palmer. Classification. Qualifying. Squared? Rio Haryanto received a 3-place grid penalty after a pit lane collision with Romain Grosjean during the 3rd practice session. Race. 1. Daniil Kvyat's car failed during the formation lap. His place on the starting grid was left vacated. Championship standings after the race.